Greetings, folks. Welcome back to the channel. As I mentioned before, we might be seeing reshoots for the upcoming Snow White film in November or December, and we could even get a new, longer trailer during that time. In other news, reports are suggesting that Bob Iger, the current CEO of Disney, may step down by 2026. This comes at a time when Disney is undergoing significant changes across its various divisions, including Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, and their live-action remakes, especially with Snow White scheduled for release in 2025. If you're into in-depth analysis like this, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up to stay updated on all things Disney and beyond. Let's dive into the ongoing shifts at Disney. Bob Iger has built a reputation for championing innovation, often through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DI). However, Disney's recent strategies under his leadership raise important questions. Is this focus on DI truly enhancing their storytelling? Or is it a tactical move to satisfy shareholders? Disney's commitment to DI is clear across many of its projects, but the real challenge is how these initiatives are perceived by audiences. While some applaud Disney's inclusive efforts, others feel the focus has shifted too far from compelling narratives, leaving storytelling secondary to fulfilling diversity quotas. Bob Iger is navigating a particularly challenging landscape, balancing Disney's commitment to being progressive with the risk of alienating longtime fans. The company's push for inclusivity and diversity is at the center of this debate, but the question remains whether these efforts are resonating with Disney's core audience or driving them away. Disney's strategy of incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion (DI) into its projects has become a point of contention, sparking discussions about whether the focus on representation is overshadowing the quality of storytelling. One of the most prominent examples of this tension is the Snow White live-action remake, which has faced unprecedented backlash. Fans aren't just expressing mild dissatisfaction, they're actively boycotting the film, a significant indicator of deeper discontent. In response, Bob Iger has downplayed the criticism, labeling it a false narrative and asserting that Disney's commitment to DI is genuine, with no hidden political agenda. Yet, for many, Iger's comments come off as defensive rather than forthright. His description of the backlash as stemming from a mere number of fans feels like an attempt to minimize the growing unrest, raising suspicions that the company may be underestimating the extent of the pushback. This brings us to a critical question: is Disney losing touch with its audience? When Iger claims that Disney isn't engaged in a culture war, it seems to contradict the feelings of many fans. There's a growing perception that Disney's focus on DI has shifted from being about fostering genuine inclusivity to advancing a politically charged agenda, one that many feel prioritizes representation at the expense of meaningful storytelling. Fans have pointed to projects like The Acolyte and upcoming Marvel films as examples of this trend, where character development is perceived as shallow and more emphasis is placed on diversity checkboxes than on crafting deep, emotionally resonant narratives. This broader shift within Disney raises concerns that the company's leadership may be prioritizing social agendas over the core principles that have. Bob Iger's leadership at Disney has long been synonymous with growth, innovation, and strategic acquisitions that transform the company into a global entertainment juggernaut. During his tenure, Iger successfully integrated Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm into Disney's portfolio, acquisitions that not only expanded the company's influence, but also brought some of the most beloved stories and characters to life, and relatable characters. The once sacred bond between Disney and its audience appears to be fraying, with the risk of further alienation if these concerns continue to go unaddressed. Iger's reluctance to fully acknowledge the dissatisfaction surrounding the Snow White remake may only deepen the divide, further distancing the company from the very fans who have been its most loyal supporters. On the financial side, Iger has publicly stated that over 45% of the profits from Disney's recent successes are being funneled into DEI-driven projects. While the idea of reinvesting profits to support diversity initiatives might align with the company's current vision, it raises questions about long-term sustainability. Disney's major franchises, like those under Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios, are already facing significant criticism for what many perceive as a decline in quality. Can Disney afford to continue investing so heavily in DI initiatives while core storytelling seems to suffer? Recent blockbuster hits like Deadpool 3 and The Return of Wolverine have proven to be commercial triumphs, generating significant revenue. However, the profits from these successful ventures are being redirected toward DI-focused projects, leaving many to wonder if this strategy is wise. If the perceived decline in storytelling quality continues, audiences may lose interest, directly impacting future box office earnings. Franchise fatigue, a growing sentiment among fans disillusioned with the new direction, is already setting in, and Disney risks exacerbating the situation if it doesn't find a way to reconnect with its audience. Ultimately, Disney finds itself at a crossroads. The company's leadership must decide whether its current approach, emphasizing DI at the expense of what many believe are the core pillars of entertainment, can be sustained. If not, Disney could face long-term financial and reputational risks, especially if fan disillusionment continues to grow. The challenge now is for Disney to find a balance between inclusivity and the storytelling depth that made it a beloved entertainment powerhouse for generations. Whether the company can recalibrate before it loses more of its audience remains to be seen. Under Iger's leadership, Disney evolved into a cultural powerhouse, setting the standard for franchise filmmaking and redefining the entertainment industry. However, as Iger nears the twilight of his career, the concern among fans and critics alike is that Disney's heavy investment in DI initiatives may be coming at the expense of the storytelling quality that made the company famous. When so much focus is placed on messaging and representation, the narrative depth can sometimes take a back seat. Fans are noticing that the heart and soul of Disney's stories, its rich characters, engaging plots, and emotional journeys are being overshadowed by a checklist of social priorities. His leadership style appears to have shifted from visionary and proactive to defensive and reactionary, particularly in response to mounting criticisms around Disney's focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion DI. One of the most significant flashpoints in this debate is the controversy surrounding the Snow White live-action remake. The film has faced widespread backlash, with many fans expressing not just disappointment but outright rejection of the project. This level of fan discontent is unusual for Disney, a company whose films have historically been met with enthusiastic anticipation. The backlash goes beyond aesthetic choices or casting decisions. Fans are boycotting the film, citing concerns that Disney's commitment to DI has come at the cost of authentic storytelling. In a particularly revealing statement, Iger dismissed much of the criticism, calling it a false narrative, and suggesting that those who reject films like Snow White are dealing with personal issues related to how they see the world. This is a dangerous stance for any CEO, particularly one leading a company as emotionally connected to its audience as Disney. Disney has long thrived on its ability to form deep, emotional connections with generations of fans. Its brand is built on nostalgia, magical storytelling, and the promise of shared experiences that resonate across age, race, and culture. By framing fans' concerns as personal flaws, Iger risks alienating the very people who have supported Disney through its many eras. Dismissing legitimate critiques of the company's direction could further erode trust in the brand, especially among its core audience, who feel increasingly disconnected from the values Disney now appears to prioritize. While it's true that the cultural landscape is evolving and representation and inclusivity have become central to modern entertainment, there is a delicate balance to strike. There's no denying the importance of representation. Audiences want to see themselves reflected in the stories they love. But storytelling that prioritizes representation at the expense of narrative depth or emotional engagement risks becoming hollow, more a checkbox exercise than a meaningful contribution to the broader cultural conversation. Disney's current approach, particularly in projects like Snow White, raises an important question: can the company balance its DI initiatives with the strong storytelling foundations that made it a cultural icon? Iger's defensive posture seems to overlook the fact that fans are not necessarily rejecting the idea of inclusion, but rather the execution. Many feel that Disney's focus on DI has veered into tokenism, where diversity is included for diversity's sake, without the necessary depth to make these characters feel real or relatable. This issue is reflected in a broader trend across Disney's recent projects, where fans have expressed concern that character development and storytelling have taken a backseat to social agendas. Projects like The Acolyte and several upcoming Marvel titles have been criticized for featuring shallow characters with little emotional depth or compelling arcs, instead focusing more on diversity as the central theme. This shift toward prioritizing social agendas over narrative substance is causing a noticeable rift between Disney and its once devoted audience. The heart of Disney's magic has always been in its ability to tell timeless stories that resonate with people across generations. Themes of hope, adventure, love, and personal growth define the Disney experience, creating an emotional connection that fans held dear. However, recent films and remakes have stirred debates about whether the company has lost its touch, focusing less on what made Disney beloved and more on trying to align itself with contemporary cultural conversations. This shift, while intended to keep the brand relevant, has alienated many fans who feel that Disney has strayed too far from its roots. Fans who grew up on classics like Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Aladdin often expressed disappointment that the newer films seem to lack the same depth and charm. Where once there were well-rounded characters navigating universal struggles, some of today's Disney films feel more like vehicles for messaging, with plots that are less engaging and characters that feel two-dimensional. The growing perception is that Disney is trying too hard to make statements, which is fine in theory, but when it comes at the cost of rich storytelling, the magic fades. This disconnect between Disney and its fan base isn't just a cultural problem but also a creative one. If the audience feels left behind, Disney risks becoming a relic of the past rather than a beacon of imaginative storytelling for future generations. Bob Iger's recent comments regarding Snow White further complicate this issue. By referring to the backlash as coming from only a number of fans, Iger seemed to dismiss the broader discontent felt across a substantial portion of Disney's audience. The reality is that this frustration is widespread, and it points to a larger issue of how Disney views its relationship with its audience. Rather than listening and engaging with fan feedback, the company seems to be moving forward with a sense of defensiveness, implying that those who are critical of certain films or casting decisions have personal issues with the world. This kind of rhetoric creates an adversarial relationship with the audience and only deepens the divide between the company and its once loyal fan base. The entertainment landscape has drastically changed and fan voices are louder than ever. Social media and fan communities have amplified criticism and discussion, allowing viewers to share their opinions instantly and broadly. Disney, a company that once prided itself on being attuned to its audience, now seems to be brushing off this dialogue. Fans who feel their concerns aren't being taken seriously are likely to drift away from the brand, and in today's competitive streaming market, that's a dangerous prospect. Disney's strength has always been its adaptability and its ability to stay culturally relevant while still providing high-quality entertainment. But if the company continues to disregard fan concerns, it risks losing the emotional connection that has sustained it for decades. Beyond the cultural implications, Disney's current direction raises significant financial concerns. According to Iger, over 45% of Disney's profits from recent blockbusters are being funneled into diversity, equity, and inclusion DI-driven projects. It's been under fire for its handling of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, with fans divided over how the legendary franchise has been managed. Similarly, Marvel Studios, once a juggernaut in the entertainment industry, is facing its own challenges, with recent releases failing to capture the same magic that defined the earlier phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU).